Hello beautiful souls and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna do something little bit different than usual, as so many of you have been asking me in the comments if I would please do a tutorial for how I do my shadows and my highlights. So I thought, why not make this a little Tuesday series? I still cannot believe that I get to share something that I love so much with so many kind and beautiful souls. You all make me so happy, and my wish to give all of that love back to you is immense. So I thought that I would make this a little tutorial series where I take you along with me and talk about each step with each topic a little more in depth, in case you want to have a little bit more of an explanation. And my wish with this little series is to give you all the tools, all the knowledge, so that you have everything within you to just create what your imagination is seeing. So please let me know in the comments what you would like to know more about in depth, explained. I would love to make that for you. So before we start and get into today's little tutorial, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who are so kind and so beautifully sweet in the comments. Have been asking about making a tutorial like this, and I'm very excited that I'm sitting here right now about to do some shading with you guys. So before we get into the actual coloring and shading, let's pop some very beloved watercolor paper, which already has a lot of my coloring pages engraved in it. So this is just a very regular watercolor paper. You could basically use any watercolor paper. I think this is 300 GSM, and I like using watercolor paper simply because it absorbs all the ink very nicely. And each of the Ohuhu marker set comes with this plastic sheet, but I never used it solely for the purpose or for the reason that it's too small for the books. So I didn't want to have to worry about sliding it back and forth, so I just took one of the watercolor sheets in my watercolor paper book. So you can basically use any, but I think the thicker the better, because it will absorb more ink. So I just popped that behind the page, and then we're good to go. This is so exciting to talk to you guys while I'm doing this, because I'm usually not, and I just love chatting with all of you so much in the comments, and doing this kind of coloring along, chatting along today is super exciting, and I'm very, very happy that you're here. So when it comes to shading, it always helps to start out by just look at the page and determine where the light comes from. So usually you have the privilege of having some kind of light source in your image. Like here's the lamp. It's obviously outside, so you could choose if it's daylight, if it's in the morning, evening, sunset. If it's in a room, there's usually a lamp somewhere or a candle, stuff like that, so you can orientate on where the light comes from. If there's none, you just simply make it up. So there's no rules to art, at least for me there ain't. Coloring is all about just having fun and expressing what you feel inside, and it will turn out uniquely yours and beautiful anyways. So don't stress too much about the light source, just pick a side. I usually always pick like upper left corner, but here it has a lamp, so you can orientate on that. But if it doesn't have a light source, you can basically choose anywhere. I like it having a little angle, not from straight up above, but like either way from the sides, that look pretty cool. Or if there's a light source down, like a bonfire or a laptop, you can have the light coming from down, and that will make pretty cool shadows upwards. So what that makes is that this is where the light comes from, and this is pretty basic light theory, which basically means that the shadow will fall on the opposite side of everything that you color. So when the light comes from here, it will create a shadow underneath the roof. This side will be shadow. The little doggo will have shadow under his face, on the ears, and it will cast a shadow on this side of the bird as well. So it helps to start out by just taking a quick glance. It doesn't have to be a long analysis. Just quick glance, where does the light come from, and if it doesn't have a light, you just basically choose where you want it to come from. And there will be no light police coming for your coloring pages, so don't stress it too much. What the shading does is that it really makes the page come to life. So without the shading, the image will remain very flat and not have too much definition or 3D effect. So when you add shading to your coloring page, it will really make the page pop. The same as with highlights, which we'll talk about in another video. And I'm really excited about making this a series of tutorials, because there's so much joy and beautiful moments to be experienced when you're sitting with your coloring page and you just have the knowledge of how you can turn it into how you truly imagine it in your mind. So so many of you have been asking for if I would do a tutorial on shading, and here we are. I always like just having a quick glance at the color cards. I never plan my colors too much ahead. I just mostly go with the flow, but I like just having a quick look of where I want the page to go. It gets messy after a while, but it's just very helpful to kind of like set your direction for the page. So I usually start with the one that I'm the most certain about. In this one, I know that I want the grass to be green. So we'll start out with this little selection of green colors, and when I build the shadows, I always like to start with the brightest color and then grow the shades step by step. But everything that I talk about in this video is basically just how I like to color my pages, how I like to shade everything. Like, there's no rules or set in stone, or this is just basically my style of coloring. And with time, you will also eventually develop your own style, because you pick up different bits and pieces from everywhere and shape basically your own style. It's with the same like with original art. You will learn and absorb from so many places and just basically, yeah, mold it into your own kind of collection. So let's start. And what I love so much about alcohol markers in general, and about my Ohuhu markers so much, is the way that it just ends up being this seamless one unit of color, like if you printed it. And I never have to struggle too much with streaks, but you do have to be careful when you're doing bigger patches that you don't let the edges dry too much before you continue the place where you left off, like here now, because it's gonna leave then a mark. Like for example here, you have to make sure that you pick up your loose ends pretty quickly and always exchange the size that you do it on, because if not, it's gonna leave kind of like this line where you left off and where you started over again. So there's basically two ways to go about coloring that will get kind of like two different type of effects. If you will color then above in a darker tone, when the base color is still wet, you will get like this kind of gradual shading, which is perfect when you have round objects that doesn't have that hard line for the shadow. And if you let it dry, it will get this very clean shadow cast effect. And with these bigger patches, it's kind of hard to still catch the color while it's wet, so you will then end up having harder lines. But for smaller objects like later the chicken or the doggo, you will be able to have that gradual soft round shaped shading. And it's cool to play around with both in your page to just have that kind of different nuances. So we're going to go over this very bright green base layer with a little darker bright green. So what we're basically doing here, we're going with these three colors. So you see that they're kind of basically in the same color family. And that's another thing that is very fun to play around with when it comes to shading. Either way, you can take a bright color and use a stronger color as the shade of that, or you can go with a color in the same family, which I like to do sometimes too, and did a lot in the beginning because my set was very limited and I didn't have that many options. For example, in my first set with midtones, I really loved to combine, for example, the strong red, which we will most probably do later in this picture, to combine the strong red, because that is already the most reddest red, and use the red gray as a perfect shadow for that one. And that will then look very rich and very warm compared to, for example, if you would use a red and then use a cool gray, then it will feel a little like crashing with each other. So this is always very fun to play around with. For example, with the brighter colors, I always love to build it up with just stronger colors within the same family. And sometimes, like with the dull greens, I like to go in with my beloved beige green, which is running empty because I've been using it so much. Using the beige green, for example, together with the green gray, which then makes this very nice dark green shadow. So this is something that you can really play around with, or like a bright pink and a strong pink. Yeah, that's the different kind of ways that you can do shading basically. So we're gonna go, in this case, we have these three shades of green, and we're gonna gradually build it from the brightest that we just did lay, and now we're gonna go with a mid-tone. And there's obviously a million ways of how you can color grass, but I kind of like to not make it too detailed as of now, but this is how I'm currently shading bushes or grass. So there is basically no rules to this, so you just go in however you like. So now I will start with making it darker outside, because this grass will obviously have some kind of volume, so it's going to be a little higher, so that will automatically cast a shadow on the outside. This is where you have to trust the process. Even if it looks funny in that moment, trust me, it's gonna look good in the end. So then we have a lot of items lying around here. We have some flowers, some piece of love letters from Doggo that is currently writing, and some markers. So we're just gonna do like a simple shadowing line, and keeping in mind that the light comes from here, so it would automatically cast a shadow for the paper line like this. Doggo obviously casts also quite a big of a shadow. This note as well. And I always love when I sit here and color, I love to think about that you're sitting there right now coloring with me. That makes me very happy. So this, most probably, I had a few goes at writing. Didn't like how he formulated himself. Didn't quite catch the emotion he wanted to convey, so he's already been scrapping a couple of drafts. So you're already, oh yeah, you're not seeing anything. So you're already starting to see how the page is coming to life, and you basically just keep on going until it feels like it looks realistic. So little chicken over here will be casting some shadows as well. And there is really no right or wrong in this, but if you see the light coming from here, that would obviously cast some shadow from the plants as well. And then we can go into some little grass details just to make it a little more 3D-ish. Always makes it look very cute. So over here we have some more flowers, and since the light is coming from here, the shadow will be on the opposite side of the light. Don't mind the shadow police. We just don't mind them at all. They will be like, but the light has to come from one direction. You know what? It's all about just having fun with it. So, and then we have a couple more plants over here that will obviously cast shadow too. And when it starts getting complicated, I like just focusing on one at a time. So obviously the plant will cast a shadow, and also the house will cast a shadow, and then it's up to you to determine just how much of a shadow you want it to cast. So the light is hanging here, so there will be some kind of shadow going on here, and I will just make like a slight line going like this. So you already start feeling like this is happening. So I feel like the light should go a little more further out, and that would also not collide so much with the plant, so it's not so confusing, because the picture should be easy to read when you first glance on it. Basically the basics in drawing applies in coloring too, because you're using the same techniques. So that feels really good. I'm really happy about that. Oh, this makes me so excited. So we've got the base and the first shading. And then we have this bad boy over here, which I find the name absolutely hilarious. And what you can do here is basically go over with as many shades as you please. So what I like to do is, for example, here where the shadow now did equalize the shadow that is from the plant, go over with it darker. I don't know if this one is going to be dark enough. We try. Go over and give it a deeper shade, so that even though it's in the shade, it will have its own shadow as well, because it is closer to the ground. I don't think this is gonna be dark enough. And this is where you just have to basically try until you hit the right one. And I'm gonna just see. So this was this shade of green, and it's really not giving that much of a shade. This one I could try, but it's very similar to this one. The olive green is also very similar. I think I'm gonna try the grass green. Why not? It's even got the right name. So we're gonna go over the grass green to see if that's dark enough. If not, we're gonna go over to the green gray. Looks good. And here you can then also do a little of the grass streaks. Just give it a little life. And also you can go over the outskirts of the grass to give it that even further 3D effect. And what you see happening here is that it then just gives it this just even further dynamic feel to it. And I just love making it so rich and like really truly come to life. I think I'm gonna try the green gray, my beloved green gray 06. This one always looks super beautiful together with green colors because it gives it then this dark shade. Yes, that's what we want. Because you see the color that we added here, once it dries, it turns out very similar to the other one. So we'll just add a little bit, not too much. And since this is closer to the light source, I will just go over it one more time with the same color that will make it a little darker. Then you have like this gradual, since it's a little closer to the light source, we don't want the shadow to be that harsh. And I would go over then, because he's so big, Doggo needs a stronger shade. And here too, it's a little. And basically there's like this very basic light theory that the bigger the object, the more shadow it will cast. So a flat piece of paper that lies here won't obviously cast a very long shadow. So you can really play around with it. And also if something is very close to the ground, it won't cast that much of a shadow. So just adding this now makes it feel of the paper is lying on top of the grass, if that makes sense, and not in the grass. So I think that turned out pretty cool. So just by adding these shadows, it already has this feeling of the light coming from here and illuminating everything that's here and casting longer shadows on the things that are further away. And it also has this, because we used warm shades of green, the green yellows, that's what the names are for, because it's green and yellow, but green the most, and second color is yellow. Little fun fact. Because we used warm green colors, it has this feeling as if the sunlight, like that is coming yellow light on it. So for little chicken over here, I will be using my beloved hues of orange. And this is basically what I talked about earlier, that by building gradually from the brightest color, you use the same hues but in a stronger sense to create a sense of shadow. And what I love about these is that it really makes the item glow. And it's the same 3 colors that I love to use on fire or candles. We start with the brightest color and gradually build the shadows from there. So we will just go ahead and color little Mr. Chicken with moccasin, which is also my favorite yellow tone. And what we will do now, while this is still wet, we will go over with the next color, because then it will blend very nicely and make this illusion of roundness. So you basically go around where you feel like little Mr. Chicken would be his roundest. A little on the back of his head. And you already see that he looks kind of 3D just by adding that. And then you go ahead with another darker shade and go over that once more, but each time a little smaller. So you started here with the other one, and here we start there. This beak will obviously be orange. And there you go. Now we'll just go ahead and make one of the flowers yellow as well. And there also, I start with the brightest color and work my way up. Flowers is a little different. There you can really just play around however you please. So now we're gonna go ahead and color the house. And I imagine this little doggo house to be red. So we're gonna go in with a cadmium red and a red gray 150, and this one is so beautiful together with this one. If you've been watching a lot of my videos from the beginning, these were my go-to colors to shade red, and it just, I love it so much. We're gonna start out by just simply basically coloring the doghouse. Go. So what you see now, oh wait, I'm going to do this one too. So what you see now, that if you would leave the red color like it is now, of course that looks super beautiful, but it looks very flat, like there's no 3D effect to this little doghouse. So what we will do now is that we will add shading, and the trick with adding the gray hues, the same goes for when you add the green gray, is to wait until it's dry. If you add this one on top of wet ink, it's gonna lift the ink and get very bright, so you will have in the end a very much brighter shadow, which makes no sense. So here, obviously, since the light comes from here, it will cast a shadow underneath the roof, underneath the bone. You can determine if these lines are very prominent. So if we add shades to these two, it will look like these are real wooden panels. And of course, since the light comes from here, it will add shadow to this entire back wall and also to the inner wall. So we just start. And since the light comes from here, it won't really cast any shadow here. So then we just go ahead and color this side. And as you see, it creates this very dark, rich, dark red. And this is like a trick that you can get this very dark red without having that actual color in your marker collection. Because when you have like a mid-size set or a smaller set, it's so much fun to play around with how you can combine the colors to just make it something else. That's what I really love. With having less colors, you really get creative in how you can utilize them the best way. Suddenly, it's 3D. So we're gonna go straight onto the roof, and with the roof, I want to try something a little different than I've done before. I want to make like this stone kind of feel to it. So then we're gonna go ahead and color the roof, and I just picked out a little collection of gray hues that we will use to create this kind of patchwork stone. There's really no system to the madness here other than just doing what feels right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add the darker shade to each of the stones to make it that 3D effect. So for example, on the beige parts here I used the ash rose, and I really love how the lipstick natural goes together with this one, so I use that as an example. So this stone will create kind of like a little shadow for this one. Create an illusion of a 3D effect. And with the warm gray 3, I'm just gonna go in with a warm green 4. The cool gray 0, I'll go over with the cool gray 2. And where I used the cool gray 2, I'll go over with a natural gray 05. And with time you will automatically develop your own sense of feeling to what colors go good together. Like, I obviously had no clue when I started out, but with experience you just gather a sense of feeling through trial and error what colors complement each other and what colors go good together for shading, and you will then easily just grab those colors that you know go perfectly well together. So there you go, perfect little stone roof. So to my favorite colors for wood, I love these three colors together. It's the dark Sutan, the answer to every problem, and the Caribbean Cocoa, and dark brown. So I'm gonna start, as always, with the brightest color. And again, since this is a round object, shading while it's still slightly wet. We will do our beloved collection of firing hues. So I'm going to start with the brightest one, and here is really no limitations to how far you can go, right? So you can make this entire area basically an illumination. I want to keep this pretty simple, but you could go all out and make this like a whole cone thing. But I think we will keep it at this. And of course, I would obviously need stuff to be purple. Purple and yellow always, anyways, fit very nice together. So this one is also round, so we will add the shadows while it's still wet. Just like that. And of course, Mr. Doggo is writing on lavender paper. So we will make these purple as well. Of course, he's sending purple notes, right? Did we expect anything else? And also for the bone. Then we go in and give the notes some shadow as well. And for Doggo himself, we're gonna pick up some of those wooden tones again to make the entire picture quite cohesive. So there you go, the finished page, all shadows and fresh, and this way it just adds that little ugh to the page and makes it truly come alive. For me personally, it's what I love so much about coloring, is transforming the page from completely black and white and flat into a very dreamy, cozy space, which is truly your own imagination. So there's really no limits and no rules. Just please let yourself completely free. And one further step to make this page completely pop is to add highlights, and that is something that we will do together next week. So I'm very excited to make this little series. Please write me in the comments how you like this and what you would like to see more of when it comes to tutorials, because you guys are so beautiful, and so many have been writing me that you would love for me to make some in-depth tutorials about certain topics. So feel free to let me know. I would love to do everything, so let me know what you would like to see and I will make sure to see what I can do. So tune in for next week. We're going to transform this page even further with adding highlights, and I will talk a little further about how I do that, because that's another point that I absolutely love. So thank you so much for watching, and if you like this kind of video, come and talk to me in the comments, because I would love to know how you guys liked it and if there's anything that you would like to see more of. I'd basically be happy to talk about anything that you guys would love to know more in-depth details about. And I hope this video is of some kind of help for your own journey with coloring, and I just want to say that it makes me so happy to always read your comments and to share this passion of mine with all of you. And so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!